Are you an FSD Beta Hybrid Driver? I'm Frugal Tesla Guy, and I'm going to tell you why I am and what that means. For anyone who follows FSD Beta closely, or even every once in a while just to stay up to date, you have most likely heard or read that FSD Beta is not perfect, and more specifically, in beta form as stated in its title. Now, for those of us who are fortunate enough to be beta testers, we've all been through the different phases of being a tester. At first, you have all of the patience in the world, including just sitting at a stop sign when it's perfectly clear and waiting to see what the car will do, pending, of course, whether or not there are cars behind you. And speaking of cars behind you or beside you or any traffic at all, you begin to make sacrifices to your own personal driving style, such as waiting at the last minute to change lanes for a left or right turn, and in some cases cutting people off or even missing the turn altogether, or taking too long to turn right at a traffic light or stop sign, because FSD Beta is waiting until it's safe, even though you and the person behind you know it is long before FSD Beta. And changing lanes for no reason at all, only to go back into your original lane down the line. Now, the list can go on and will be different for everyone who has FSD Beta. Now, at first, you shrug it off, accepting that it's part of the job. Then you eventually get honked at or even given a finger a few times, and that's when it starts getting personal. So you start losing your patience, and even though you still use FSD Beta for almost every drive, you start making adjustments, and before you know it, you have become an FSD Beta Hybrid Driver. Now, by definition, and what I mean by that is by my definition, it's when FSD Beta is engaged with assistance from a licensed driver. Technically, as an FSD Beta tester, you must agree to always be on high alert and take over at any time. An FSD Beta driver is that and a whole lot more. Now, there are several different ways in which you can assist FSD Beta. For assistance that is more subtle and planned out, you would use the turn signal or lightly tap the accelerator. A more aggressive use of the accelerator and braking will be a little less subtle, while stepping on the brakes or taking over the wheel to avoid hitting another car will be a bit more abrupt. And then there is, of course, just disengaging FSD Beta altogether by pushing up on the right stalk or stepping on the brake. So let's take a look at some of these in action and see how I have become an FSD Beta Hybrid Driver. So this is an example of a stop sign. Now you can see the above is the non-assist and where I've assisted, basically stepping on the accelerator. And you can see the difference between the two. When FSD Beta does it by itself, it does take longer. Now in this instance, actually, FSD Beta did a pretty good job, but stepping on the accelerator really does kind of accelerate the whole process and make you get through that stop sign a lot faster, especially if it's safe to go, even if you don't have to come to a complete stop. This is another situation at a stop sign. There was a car behind me. In fact, you can see I kind of show that there's that car behind me. And again, I just didn't want to be that nuisance. So I decided to go ahead and step on the accelerator here and get things moving. This is at an unprotected left turn at a green light. And the cars that were going into the intersection there, across the intersection, were clearly turning to the left. So I didn't want to have to wait. And there was a car behind me, so by stepping on the accelerator, it got things moving once again. Now this is a left turn going through an intersection. You can see the car in front of me advances and turns left without any problems. Now there was a car behind me, and you can see here to the left was a car that had to go by. So it was safe to wait. But once that car went by, there was another car behind it that was turning right into the road that I was coming from. FSD Beta didn't know that, so I did have to get things going by stepping on the accelerator, and that way the person behind me wasn't going to be annoyed with the fact that we didn't really have to wait. This is a situation where I did need to step on the accelerator as well. You can see that car to the right. FSD Beta was slowly passing it, but there wasn't going to be enough time for that car to be able to merge. So I did need to step on the accelerator to get going a little faster so they wouldn't feel pressure and have to actually put on their brakes. Here's that same intersection. You can see a lot more traffic here. And what I actually ended up doing is, you can see that truck to the right, in the right lane. FSD Beta started to make the move to pass that truck, but I knew there wasn't going to be enough time to pass it. So I did have to disengage FSD Beta altogether so that truck could get through. Now on this road, typically FSD Beta gets into the right lane long before than where we are right here. So knowing the fact that eventually I was going to have to turn right, I decided it was probably a good idea to probably get in the right lane. You can see here, I was just checking the directions to make sure I was going down the right path, and indeed I was. So I went ahead and put the right turn signal on to get into the right lane. Now, normally I'd actually try to wait a little bit longer, but based on the traffic situation I could see in front of me and behind me, it was a little busier than usual, and I wanted to make sure that there was going to be enough room for me to get into the right lane and not feel the pressure later on to have to merge into traffic. Now, this is a road that eventually this right lane turns into a right turn only lane. Now, I've let FSD Beta do its own thing in the past, and typically what FSD Beta does is it stays in the right lane and it doesn't know what to do once it gets to that right turn. Now, what I did is I did turn my turn signal on to get into the left lane here. And you'll see as we move closer here that indeed that right lane does turn into right lane only, right there. And FSD Beta has had problems with that in the past. So to avoid that problem, I just go ahead and put that left turn signal on to get into this lane. This is another situation where it was probably just another good idea to get into the left lane. That Mustang was turning left, so it did allow me, once we got to this intersection, to get into the left lane. And we eventually reached the stop sign here as well, or stop light, that is. And the car to the right was actually turning to the right as well. There was another car beside me that was also turning right. But you can see as we cross this intersection, the right lane does merge into the left lane. So I wanted to make sure that I was in the left lane so I didn't have to merge in case there was other traffic. And here's another good example of a pedestrian and the car stopping for that pedestrian. This is a kind of a minor situation of kind of weaving through traffic. You can see getting past a few cars here. There was a Prius in front of me, and this is the lane that I was supposed to be in, but I knew I had plenty of time to pass the Prius. So I put my turn signal on, and I didn't step on the accelerator. I just kept the speed I was going because, again, that Prius was going pretty slow. And once I got past this Prius, I was actually surprised because FSD Beta on its own put on the right turn signal. Now, this is kind of a weird bug. You see how the right turn signal turns on, then it turns off, and then a little bit later down the road here, it turns its turn signal back on and then goes into the right lane. But in the end, it did this right lane here on its own. So here's another example of me using the turn signal to get into the lane that I need to. So this is a right turn, and what I need to do is immediately get into the left lane, but the car just wants to stay in the right lane. And eventually, this is the lane that merges left into traffic once we get past this traffic light. But in this situation, it not only went into the lane I needed to, but then it wanted to go into the left turn lane. So I actually did need to intervene by taking control of the wheel. Now at this traffic light, typically once I get across the intersection, FSD Beta wants to get into the left lane because there's a left turn coming up. However, that's not necessary, and I typically like to make that left turn from the right lane, which is legal, and you'll see here in a second. So what it does is it crosses the intersection and there's a car in the way. So it kind of slows down, and rather than be a nuisance, I just disengage FSD Beta altogether and then I turn off that traffic light. And again, you can turn left from both of these lanes, so I just prefer to be in this lane because otherwise it would, from the left lane, take me into the turning lane, and then I have to once again have the car change lanes to go straight. Here, it stays in the right lane and is able to go straight through this traffic light that you can see is coming up ahead. This is the same intersection, and what you'll see here is I actually do let it go into this left lane. So as we go into the left lane, remember what I was talking about before, is that when it wants to turn left here, it takes me right into that left turn lane, and then it has to put the turn signal on and go into the proper lane that I'm in now. So many times when I'm at this intersection, I disengage FSD Beta altogether so I can get into the proper lane, and then I re-engage. This is an intersection we've been through a few times. This is where I will, instead of letting it do its thing, I'll disengage it altogether, because as you can see, as we turn right, there's a lot of traffic, and I need to be in this left lane because all the traffic on the right is going to want to merge left, and I'd much rather than be a nuisance, be in the proper lane. So I do that myself, and then I re-engage. This is a fairly tricky on-ramp for FSD Beta, but as you can see, the two far right lanes, you can turn right at the upcoming traffic signal. Now, again, I like to stay in the far right lane to turn right. You can do the same thing from the left side, but FSD Beta always wants to get into that left lane to turn right. You can see it's just much more convenient to do that here. So I had to disengage to get into this lane, and since there was a lot of traffic I had to merge into, I decided to stay off of FSD Beta, get into this lane, and then re-engage into FSD Beta. This is just an example of FSD Beta doing a terrible job in what it decides it wants to do. Here you can see it needs to be in the far left lane. It eventually does that, but it gets the car in a bit of a wonky position. So rather than being that car on the road that's in a weird position in the lane waiting at the traffic light, I decided to disengage and get the car in the proper position, and then once again re-engage. This is when we go into more abrupt taking over. The car did want to get into the left lane here, but as you can see, there is a long line of traffic to the left. What was a little scary here is that once I got past this intersection, this upcoming one right here, is it decided to make a little turn to the left here. I don't know if it didn't see that car or what, but I did have to take over and stay in the right lane. I stepped on the accelerator and then got into the left lane and then re-engaged. This is another situation where I had to take over the wheel because once it made the left turn, it wanted to go into the left shoulder. So you'll see here, once this car passes, it should be able to make its way across. And you can see it's slowly making its way across. And you can see it's starting to go into the left shoulder there. Of course, I don't want to be there, so I had to take over, check traffic, and get into the left lane. And then the car actually did get into the right lane by itself as we approached this traffic light. And here is an example of being kicked out of FSD Beta. As you can see, I wasn't doing anything unusual. I was at a stoplight. I had my hand on the wheel with weight there, and I was looking forward. So I'm not sure why I was kicked out of FSD Beta, but there's a prime example of why a lot of people are complaining of being kicked out for no apparent reason. This is in no way an attempt to make FSD Beta look bad, but rather a bit of a reality check. As an FSD Beta tester, I have agreed to use the latest version of software whenever possible, and the data collected during each drive is sent to Tesla for analysis to help make improvements. But the truth of the matter is, as you get to know the software, you begin to anticipate when FSD Beta might make a bad decision. And at times, you may let it play out. But if you're not in the mood to be a nuisance on the road or to be honked at or given the finger, then you intervene in a way that best suits the situation. Then there are, of course, times I don't use it at all. My wife does not have the patience for abrupt braking and turns and says she feels like she has whiplash after being in the car with me. I also don't use it when my dog is in the car because she gets tossed around the car like a puppy learning to walk for the first time in a roller coaster. So what about you? If you have FSD Beta, have you become a hybrid driver? If so, I would love to hear about some of your techniques and how you deal with the situations. Are you still waiting to get it? If so, what are your expectations? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments section below. Well, that's going to do it for now. You all know the drill. Like, subscribe, and stay positively charged.